Hi, welcome to the Brighter Podcast. My name is Batsheva.
And my name is Chelsea.
And my days are so much brighter thanks to Chelsea.
And my days are definitely brighter thanks to Batsheva.
We love to share tools, techniques, stories, anything that we can. So today's episode is going to be packed full of juiciness with the tool that we are sharing. The tool is the umbrella for the concept of a morning routine. Is it right for you? And if so, what would be the right morning routine for you? But before we get into the episode, you know what we love to do. We love to arrive here all together using our breath. So go ahead and get comfortable. You can close your eyes if you're not driving, and go ahead and breathe in calming, quieting energy through your nose, and breathing out anything that's ready to go. Let it go. Give it permission. Breathing in calming, soothing energy. Breathing out anything that's ready to go. Give it permission to go. Final breath together. Breathe in calming, quieting energy. And breathe out whatever is ready to go. Let it go. Chelsea, how was your morning routine today? Speaking of morning routines.
I've recently implemented something new in my morning routine, which was inspired by my husband reading this book. I think I mentioned it in our last episode, but it is called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And it talks about just being, not actually doing anything, and just getting up and just being and sitting. And so I have introduced that as my very first thing to do in the morning instead of like meditating or breath work or yoga or qigong, which I have alternated and rotated those, trying to figure out exactly what is best for me. The last week or so, I've been just implementing this idea of being. And so I just get out of my bed and I go and I sit in my sanctuary. That's what I like to call it, in front of my altar. And I just sit there. And I'm not practicing any sort of technique. I'm not trying to clear my mind. I'm not focusing on my breath. I'm literally just being. And that's how today started. Yeah, then it went into a little breath work and a little meditation. And then because I thought I had so much more time, because I had misread my schedule today, I decided I was just going to lay down on the floor. It's a really rainy day, gray, rainy day here in Missouri. And so I thought, oh, I had my little heater going. I'm just going to lay down on the floor and rest for 30 minutes. And so I did.
That is so luxurious to be able to nap and rest after you've woken up. I actually really love that because often we don't give ourselves permission, but sometimes the body is like, no, I need that. And I love that you did it.
Yeah, it feels really good. Sometimes I then am a little like, oh, like I'm definitely not a napper. Some people are nappers, some people are not. I am like, usually once I lay down, then like the rest of the day is done. So it's a risky thing to do on certain days, but today it felt really good. And I'm really grateful that I gifted that to myself.
Today was not a normal day for me for a weekday because I generally have the same morning routine Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. Saturday, it's the Sabbath, which is, I pronounce it Shabbat, the Hebrew pronunciation. It's something that I used to take really seriously for 20 years. There was 25 hours that me and my family shut down and we were in our little beautiful Shabbat bubble. And there's so much that goes into it. It's like an entire episode, but it was so nourishing spiritually that it kind of fueled me for the week. But I've evolved into a different life and a different version of myself. So I still do have some elements on Saturday that I like to observe and practice. And I also like the idea of not doing what I usually do. And the reason I don't do my normal routine Tuesdays is because I happen to have a Tai Chi class that I love that takes place on the West Side at 8 in the morning. So after I drop my son to his school bus at 7:20 a.m., I race over there to get there on time by 8. So I don't have a normal morning practice of sitting, but all the other mornings I do. And even on those days, I do actually the practice that we discussed in length our last episode, episode 10, which was journaling. As you know, I do love that technique and that tool. So I manage on weekdays to fit it in. As a parent, it can be impossible to have a morning routine, especially if you're just exhausted. But at my stage of life where my kids are a bit older, my youngest, he's already 11 and he wakes up easily. So that's lucky for me. And I prep his food the day before. And so all we need to do is I need to just make sure he's got his teeth brushed and he's dressed with his shoes and socks and all the little details. And then once I've got him sitting down and eating and he gets to watch a little TV, I retreat to my bedroom and I journal. So that's the first thing I do. And it takes me about anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. Then I leave that practice. I go drop him to the school bus. If the school bus is on time and things are smooth, I come back home. I generally let my 15-year-old find her own way to school, unless like today it's raining, so I had to drive her. But usually she can take the bus or walk. So I come back and I do my 1 hour Vipassana meditation. But once Chelsea described to me her sitting, I won't call it a meditation, her sitting practice, I realized that my version of doing the 1 hour Vipassana every morning, it is some sort of combo between the Vipassana meditation that we learned on our retreat that we talk about in episode 1. And it's a version of that, but it's also combined with my own version of sitting, really, because I can get very real with myself. If emotions come up, I cry. I'm just being as well. So I loved to hear that from Chelsea, that that's sort of like a known practice and recommended, because I feel like this morning hour totally in this subtle and magical and alchemic way has transformed my day to day in my life. And it's really hard to put into words how and why, other than I know that I feel my life is more often in the flow and I feel more patient, which has always been tough for me to feel true patience with things unfolding in my life that I desire, or patience when things aren't going my way. And I attribute a lot of that up leveling to that daily practice. And then all that said, as Chelsea asked me, what about this morning? It went out the window. Other than the journaling, I did do the journaling, but it's raining. So I had to take Esther, my 15-year-old, to school, and the school bus for David was late. And once I got home, I could have sat for like 20 minutes, but I did not. I did other, emails, and I paid a bill. I did all the lovely non-morning routine practice things before actually, no, but I did listen to like 5-10 minutes of the Know Thyself podcast, and he was interviewing an Indian guru. And so I felt that I received a little bit of calm and peace just from listening to that. So
Yes, I think that that's an important thing to note is that, like you said, your life, talking about Shabbat and how your life has evolved and you have evolved. I think that that's an important thing to note because for me, for the longest time, I could almost be really harsh and judgmental and shaming and critical of myself whenever I wouldn't hit all of the things on my morning routine. My morning routine has changed numerous times. I mean, at one point it was like a 4 hour long thing. And, I've done oil pulling and I've done celery juice, and there's always been like some sort of movement. And now there's the Qigong and the yoga and the breath work and the meditation. And there's been journaling from time to time. And so, but for me, it's kind of like what you're saying, like flowing with what works at this moment, flowing with what works today. And I like to share that with my clients or friends or anyone that is new into a morning routine or trying to start one. It doesn't have to be anything specific. It literally is your morning routine, whatever that looks like for you. And I loved how you stated that your morning routine has allowed you to feel more patience and more flow in the day, because that's exactly how I feel as well. The days that I don't get anything in, or that I get up and I'm like, if I were to get up and be having to run right out the door, I can really feel that all day long. And even if I wake up, even if I decide to gift myself sleeping in a little bit, it's like, oh, I didn't go to bed at the time that I would have liked to go to bed last night. My body is tired. I'm going to gift myself a little bit longer of sleep in exchange for, shortening my morning routine. I've come to love and accept that and be okay with it. And it doesn't mean that the rest of the day is shit. It's just a little bit less. But I still, like you said, like how you connected with the podcast today and how that, kind of centered you. It's like just giving yourself, whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, like whatever it is that you can work in and however it is that you feel comfortable. And yeah, the sitting and being or the breath work or having a cup of tea or coffee or cacao or whatever it is, just like that time to yourself, journaling. I think that for me, the morning routine, like you said, it's not just more patience, but it's more focus and an intention with, okay, what am I relaxing into the day and welcoming the day? And then thinking about what do I want my day to look like? And how am I going to approach the things that come? Because we can't see everything that is in store for us.
I'm curious when you started to do a regular morning practice, because I know for years and years you were a nurse with crazy hours and traveling and all the things. And I'm so curious, like when did that switch happen and what did it look like?
Hmm. Well, let's see. It was definitely before, like while I was nursing.
What inspired you to
I wanna
start?
say it's at least been since actually, I think it was probably 2019 is really whenever I restarted. That was kind of like my breakout year. Lots of changes, lots of growth, lots of discomfort happened that year, and that was the time where I was alone for quite some time in the year. Hunter and I did not live together, and so I was really able to focus on myself. And then in 2020, I ended up doing some travel nursing assignments. And as everyone knows, that was COVID. And I was like, in a space by myself. And that was really whenever it was like, okay, take care of yourself, be at your tip top. I was getting into cold plunging then. So, yeah, I would say 2019 is really whenever it started kicking off. From 2012, I was doing something. It was never the extent of what it is. 2012 is like whenever my yoga journey started, thanks to my dear friend Marina taking me to my very first Bikram class. And so, yeah, that was like a daily practice, but it wasn't necessarily a morning practice. And there was journaling that was going on sporadically, but nothing was ever concrete or really consistent, I would say. It was just like it was happening on a weekly basis, but not every single day. But I would say, yeah, sometime in between there. It's definitely after I quit drinking, I think. I think I probably quit drinking in 2020. When was that? 2017, maybe? Somewhere around there. Definitely got a lot healthier after that and not sleeping in near as much.
That is exactly what you were saying made me think about is how lifestyle so much can support or not support the ability to have a habit and a routine every morning to support oneself, like a spiritual, a physical, emotional breath practice. Because, like, it was so fascinating for me to hear you say that it was when you weren't living with someone that it really took root and blossomed. And when you were by yourself, especially in COVID, when we were very isolated. And I thought back, my first major breakup from my boyfriend in my 20s. We had been together, we'd even lived together for 5 years. And it was only when we broke up that I first read that book I mentioned before, The Artist's Way. And I did the morning pages every day. I couldn't wake up so early because I was in my 20s and I was still drinking and I was exhausted and I wanted to like sleep in as much as I could. But even not at that point, I guess it wasn't a morning practice, but at least to do a daily practice. But I was doing yoga as well. And I had the beginnings of a spiritual awakening. That's when those seeds were similarly planted for me. But the morning routine for me really did not happen until after my divorce. And also my kids are older so that I can do it without, I mean, when people have babies to take care of, or even if you have a husband, I think it's difficult. You are already evolved enough that your practice is in place, but many people just starting out, it's so challenging to make that change when you already are in a routine with a partner, or especially if you have little kids. And I mean, sleep is so precious. And if you don't get a lot of sleep, to think about waking up early just so you can journal or, do your morning meditation. I kind of get it why maybe that season of a person's life isn't really even the time to start a morning routine. Like maybe for them, they could be perhaps inspired to find a midday routine, or like some other time that they gift themselves. It doesn't have to be the morning. Maybe they just give themselves a cup of coffee or like while if like they're nursing, like while the baby's nursing. I have one friend who does meditation every time her baby nurses. It's like you don't have to follow all the guidelines and all the mantras and the breathing techniques of the gurus. Like, no, just like Chelsea said, sit and be still. And that is a morning routine.
Yeah, just be. Like, that's what we are, human beings. We just came here to be.
100%. And actually, while I was married and had a harder time, oh my gosh, I mean, I didn't have a morning window. I just didn't because I'd be racing to open the coffee shop if I wasn't getting the kids ready. And the minute I got them to school, I'd have to run to the coffee shops. And my sleep was precious. But I remember when I started a meditation routine, which wound up then segueing myself into a morning routine. Ultimately, when I had a morning window, started with my sleep mask, my one chair in my bedroom. I would put the timer for 10 minutes and I would put like a do not disturb sign on my door, and people would know. They would walk in anyway, but they'd see me with the blindfold and they'd know to tiptoe and go out, and I would just like ignore any noise. And that seed level, I did challenge myself to do 10 minutes a day. Of course, I didn't do it every day, but again, to form a habit, it is wise and scientifically advised to commit and do something every day, let's say for a month, ideally, like around 30, 40 days, people say, just to get it in your cellular level, that habit. And then you can, I think it's after that, it becomes a little bit easier to make it personal, make it your own, play with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That you just talking about the 30 days reminded me of my buildup for the Vipassana retreat. I did that 40 days of transformation on the Insight Timer app with David G. And it was amazing. And I did afterwards, I was like, oh, this is easy. Like I can do this because I had trained for it. And yeah, like you're saying, it's interesting. Where I find myself now is it being stronger than the mind, or is it listening to the body, or is it both? Because, like I said, this morning, I woke up and things had been canceled. And so I was like, oh, I could go back to sleep. Like, I don't need to get up yet. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get up and just go do my sit. And so I got up in that moment. I kind of went against, I feel like it was more of a mind, like, oh, I don't want to, versus like, oh, my body feels exhausted. And then once after I had my sit and did breath work and a meditation, then I was like, oh, I have some time. And I did feel tired. I was like, oh, you could just rest for like, you know, 30 minutes or an hour. And I gifted myself that. So it's like I kind of go back and forth of like, who won? Did the mind win because it was like, oh, don't do this, don't do that? Or did I just honor my body and what my body was asking for? Not that I know that there's a right answer, but those are just something that I have been navigating recently. And a lot of it has to do with the morning routine because I've kind of programmed into myself. And I'm sure that everyone has heard all of the many things of like successful people get up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever they do. Or if you want to be successful, then this is what you do for your morning routine and all of those things. And then there's like, oh, what season are we in? Winter. What's everything doing? Hibernating. It's sleeping. It's resting. And I have felt more in line and attuned to the seasons this year. And I attribute that to slowing down and to spending more time getting to know myself and my cycle, my female cycle, and the astrology, paying attention to what's going on energetically and seasonally, and just my listening to my body, like not numbing myself or busying myself so much that I'm not listening or paying attention. And so, yeah, but it is once that you're like trained or have that ingrained in your mind, maybe you listen to your parents say, like, oh, people that sleep in are lazy, or, whatever it is, like whatever stories or belief systems are in place. It's kind of hard to shake those at times. And so retraining myself as to, oh, like you stayed up late last night, you had a client, you didn't end up going to bed on time, like all these things. The Airbnbs were doing something. You've been, going with this and recognizing all those things and giving yourself credit or a break or just like, okay, where am I and why am I feeling what I'm feeling right now? And what is the right, like what feels right in my gut, in my heart, in my body. So
That is totally what it's all about. And as I'm listening to you, I was thinking it just sounds so beautiful and feminine, what we're describing, because of course we all have the masculine and feminine, but our world is very masculine tilted, the kind of advice we get and the pressure we feel to make the habits and do the things. And that I feel is more my masculine side. And then I love the introduction of the divine feminine within all of us, which she's more attuned to mind, body, soul, emotion. How are we flowing through the seasons, through the weather, through the astrology, through our own cycle, and allowing paradox to occur, allowing ourselves to live in a world where we're disciplined and we're learning ways to up level our happiness to feel brighter and brighter every day through using tools and techniques like journaling, like meditation, like breath work, like a morning routine. And also figuring out that joy and happiness is generated from self-compassion, self-forgiveness, not doing everything the same every day because we are not the same person every day. And allowing those two realities to peacefully coexist and complement each other. I think that this is where you and I have been growing and growing, and I like this path. I think it's beautiful and it's allowing and it's graceful. And I think that's what I want to finish by offering that to our listeners is the thought, the possibility that they can offer that kind of grace to themselves.
it takes me back to the moments where I have been critical and harsh and judgmental of myself. It was like, oh, the morning routine was just a checklist. Like, did I check it all off? Not necessarily was I present and enjoying and really receiving the highest benefit from the technique. Was I just like doing it to do it, to just to say that I did it? And like that's a huge difference. And yeah, it just like reminds me of like what energy are we putting out into the world? Like what are we radiating? If you're doing something and you're doing it but you're absolutely miserable and like just almost fighting it, then it's like, are you really putting out, like, is that really what you want to be putting out? Or is there maybe a better option, like a different technique, or maybe just allowing yourself what you do need that day instead of forcing something, going with the flow more?
Yeah. And even the fasting, it's taking a break from eating. It's all the same. It's like the morning routine that nourishes you and that feeds your body and your soul equally is powerful when you take breaks from it and you flow out of it and into a different version of it. And that made me think of the fasting because food is so nourishing and we need it. And we love it and it serves so many purposes. And yet we've learned the fasting can allow the cells to repair, can get rid of chronic illness. Like what in the world? That's the not doing of the thing you need to do. So, hello, it all is metaphorically representing each other like a beautiful spiral.
Yeah. I like to just tie in my word of the year, balance. It's all balanced. What we're trying to
Balance.
achieve here, the yin and the yang, the masculine, feminine, the doing and the not doing, all of it.
Thank you. Thank you. And my word is love. So I'm going to use my word to transition to our final chapter of the episode, which is our daily W's. And I know today it is my turn to share my win and wow. And then Chelsea will share her wish for today. So for today, my first win is that Chelsea and I were planning to start our meeting at a certain time, and I was a little delayed, and then she was a little delayed, and we were in contact with each other. As we've said, she's in Missouri, I'm in Los Angeles, so we're different time zones, and we're different. It's a thing we have to coordinate. And all of a sudden, my phone was on Do Not Disturb because I was preparing for the podcast. But because we were running late, I was checking texts and I saw this text that a huge food delivery had just been delivered to the front of my rainy house with all of this frozen food, fish, meat sitting out there. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have time to go quickly cut open the boxes, put them in the freezer, put them in the external freezer. And so my first win is that I got that delivery and I got it all sorted out in time, in beautiful, perfect, divine timing. All delays are beneficial
Yes.
before the podcast. And my wow for today, I'm really grateful for the rain that we're receiving here in LA as the fires were just a few weeks ago. And clearly, our beautiful vegetation and city needs this amazing rain. So I'm grateful for that. That's my wow.
Yes, like a cleansing and nourishing of the city and all the plants and animals and trees and everything. Love that. All right. My wish is going to be that everyone that's listening, everyone that this episode comes into contact with, that at their right time, they are able to find their right morning routine and what it is that allows them to feel grounded, to feel centered, to be able to approach their day in the brightest way and to receive all that is meant for them.
Beautiful. Thank you. We want to wish you all a brighter day. Thanks so much for listening. And we can't wait to meet you for our next episode 12.
Woohoo. Love you.
Love you. Bye.